I'm here with Stan the Man Lee, fresh off his address at the DICE conference. Stan, I just want to get this part out of the way. Can I get an Excelsior out of you?
You certainly can. I thought you'd never ask. Excelsior!
That was so cool. Stan, one of the things you talked about during your address is making characters that people care about. How do you go about doing that?
Well, I've got enough competition now, don't I? It's easy to say and it's hard to explain. But let me put it this way. You've probably got a number of friends, people that you know. Some of them you're more interested in than others. There are some you'd rather spend an hour with or have dinner with. Some others you figure, oh, I got to be with him. What a boring time that'll be. You have to create characters that would be the kind of friends you'd care about, or if they're villains, the kind of enemies you'd care about. They may be bad, but they should be interesting. And I guess that's the word, interesting. And again, it's easier to say than it is to do, but you've got to not make the characters you write about and create cardboard figures. You can't just get a guy and call him Joe Smith and he wants to rob a bank or he wants to kidnap the heroine and that's it. You have to say, well, what is there about Joe Smith that would interest a viewer or a game player? Well, what if he's a guy who's really a preacher in a church and he's a family man and nobody knows he's got this double life? Or what if he's really a good guy, but somebody is blackmailing him and he can't help doing what he's doing because the blackmailer has said, I'll kill your kid if you don't. I mean, you get a background that becomes interesting where the game player wants to figure out, how is this going to turn out? The big thing, the big phrase is for the hero or the villain, how will he get out of this? If you can put characters into situations where the player said, well, how will he get out of this? Even if I beat this guy up, he still have that to contend with. Even if he runs away from here, he's still got this thing that's going to fall on his head, whatever it is. And you have to, in doing a story, you structure it. So there's always little traps and little unexpected surprises. And again, the characters have to be people that you feel you know and care about, not just he's the token good guy and he's the token bad guy.
One of the things you touched on was exposing a hero's hang-ups, letting the reader know that there are flaws with the hero. Why is that important?
Oh, that's very important. You see, you can't prove it by me. I'm flawless. But your average person. No, it's, first of all, nobody likes somebody who seems to be perfect or who seems to have it all. A lot of people don't like Donald Trump, and they don't know why. It's because he seems to have everything. Nobody deserves to have everything, so you instinctively dislike the guy. So if you can, and if Donald Trump is listening, I'm only kidding. I love you, Don. You try to get characters that a game player or a viewer can identify with those faults. Get a character who's shy or claustrophobic or has vertigo, or a female who can't help spending money. She's an inveterate shopper. Or it doesn't matter what it is. People with certain traits that the game player can identify with. Just those traits make a character come alive, and you accept the character and can believe in him or her. But again, if the character is just, all right, this guy is going to work for the FBI and he's out to catch Mr. Evil over there, and that's it. And you draw a handsome-looking guy with big shoulders, and he goes out and he fights the bad guy. Well, who cares?
In terms of storytelling, you were stressing the importance of surprise, keeping the reader or the game player on their toes. How do you go about doing that?
You think of what is the logical next step in the sequence of events. The logical next step that the game player would anticipate would happen, and then you throw him a curve. Then you say, okay, this is what ought to happen. This is what everybody expects will happen. So instead of that, I'll throw this incident in, which gets them into off the track and into another series of events that were unexpected. And you find any good movie that you've ever seen, as you're following the progression of events along, something happens every so often that you didn't expect, and that keeps you on the edge of your seat. But if everything you expect to happen is happening, that's when you're bored, and that's when you find you didn't enjoy the movie, and you may not know why you didn't enjoy it. The actors may have been good, the music may have been good, everything may have been great, but you leave the theater and you think, I don't know, and it's because everything was as you expected it to be.
You also talked about creating action that people haven't seen before and how that has progressed. Can you talk about that again now?
Well, of course, that's one of the hardest things because today we've seen almost everything. I mean, we have people who, like in the Matrix, they can walk on walls and fly through the air and multiply themselves and all of that. So, what you have to do is the fight scenes, you try to get a different setting or you try to get different obstacles you put in front of the hero so he has to overcome those obstacles, and hopefully in a way we haven't seen before. And it gets more and more difficult because there's such a profusion of movies and video games out there today, and each one is trying to top the previous one. But if you're creative, you still have to find a way to incorporate the surprise and the different way of fighting, the different kind of menace, the different kind of problem that the hero has to face, and a different way of getting out of it. And I know it's difficult. I hope I'm not making it sound easy, but that's what you have to think about when you're writing and creating these things.
You mentioned Silver Surfer and The Thing as two of your favorite characters.
You were listening, son of a gun.
Of course I was listening. You're the man. What about them are you so fond of, and let's go over some of their characteristics.
Well, the Silver Surfer to me was unique because, as far as I know, there had never been a character in comic books before, or as far as I know, in movies or gaming, who is not only an action hero, but he's a philosopher. Now, I must be honest, I wrote the Silver Surfer probably 40 years ago. I wrote him a certain way. He has been in comics on and off since then. Other writers are writing him. I haven't been reading the stories. He may not be the same today as he was when I did him, but when I was writing him, I treated him like somebody from another world who's here on Earth, seeing our world and the human condition for the first time and commenting on it. I can't remember the exact words, but he'd be saying things like, the human race must be insane. I mean, why they live in a planet that's paradise. It's like the Garden of Eden. It has all the water they could want, all the food, the vegetation. It has gorgeous climate, and yet they fight each other, and this group hates that group, and don't they realize, and actually a lot of it was my own thoughts. So I made him a cosmic philosopher. And also, of course, his background. He came from outer space. He had been exiled here. He had a flying surfboard. He's one of the most unique characters, I think, ever. And they're working on a movie for him now, of course. The Thing I like just because I like the idea of this big, ugly guy, rough and tough, scary as hell, and with a heart of gold. He wouldn't hurt a fly. But he talked tough and he acted tough. And if you were a bad guy, you better not get in his way. And there was a comedian you probably don't remember years ago called Jimmy Durante. He was very funny. And he came from the east side of New York, the real low-down neighborhood. And I tried to get the Thing to talk like Jimmy Durante. And anybody who's 100 years old listening to this will know what I'm talking about.
Stan, thank you very much. I think a lot of our game creators can learn a lot from you. Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, enjoyed it.
I got to interview Stan Lee. How cool is that?